Hi, I'm Drew Stowe, and today I'm going to discuss some of the implications of quantified sporting. Imagine that you enter into a parlor, or a pub, or a coffee shop. When you arrive, others have long preceded you, and they're engaged in a heated discussion that began long before any of them got there. You listen for a while, listening to so-and-so talk about his or her king of the mountains, and eventually you pull out your cell phone and open your Strava page. Strava and other technologies allow athletes, cyclists, and people on the street to quantify performance, to archive this performance, and to share the results with others. While cycling races and other competitions have long provided contests based on rank or time, Strava allows quantification of many more aspects of racing, such as speed, interval times, wattage, and some more. For me, the implications of quantified performance get especially interesting when we start to think about competitive sport and identity performance. The quantified view takes us beyond Desserteau's view from the skyscraper of the walker in the city and gives us more of that glorious big data. While Lance Armstrong is probably the poster boy for doping in sport, doping and other forms of cheating are a systemic problem throughout all of cycling's history. While Armstrong is the only person to have ever won the Tour de France 7 times without having won the Tour de France by virtue of having his title stripped, 4-time Tour de France winner Chris Froome is now in the hot seat of doping allegations. Cyclists exist in a few-win situation. Though cycling's biopassport has been seen as an effective anti-doping technique, the recent Oscar-winning documentary Icarus casts some doubt on the efficacy of anti-doping testing. In elite road racing, cyclists are damned if they dope, damned if they don't dope, and damned if they don't dope but someone else thinks they do. Enter Chris Froome. Froome has won the Tour de France 4 times. It's worth mentioning that Froome's cycling team, Team Sky, is known for being dominant, meticulous, and extremely well-funded. In short, Team Sky's black bus is often referred to as the Death Star. One of Froome's most famous race days occurred in 2013 up Mount Ventoux. In 2015, the data from Froome's ride was leaked to the public. Additional data regarding therapeutic use exemptions was leaked in 2016, but this was not race data. The data, with that of at least 25 other riders, had been hacked from the World Anti-Doping Agency by a group of hackers called the Fancy Bears. At this point, because of hacking and other factors, privacy cannot be relied upon for the most elite riders. So, Team Sky is very private about their riders' data, and Froome's data is leaked. During the 2015 Tour de France, Froome announces that he will undergo physiological testing to provide a benchmark to the public. In many ways, this is basically a debut of Froome's performative biopassport. A doctor declares after his test that it's plausible that an individual with his numbers was clean. Prior to that, in February 2015, a Strava account showed up called Luke Skywalker. Because this unknown rider posted such powerful numbers and was accompanied by Team Sky rider Ian Boswell, it's generally thought that this rider was Chris Froome. Later then, after the physiological testing, around December of 2016, Froome opens a Strava account under his own name. So far, Froome has posted rides from December to March of 2017 and 2018. This is generally consistent with posting data from the off-season or the earliest times in the spring, well before the Grand Tours in the summer months. Currently, Froome is under investigation and facing fierce public scrutiny after testing positive for salbutamol during the 2017 Volta a España. Lance Armstrong stated that Froome will face a nightmare if he rides in the 2018 Tour de France. Given that Froome had urine thrown him on during the 2015 Tour, Froome's 2018 could be a notable case study for considerations of identity performance and public relations. So, what can be said about this with regard to privacy, labor, and leisure? First, the point of elite sport is to make dollars and cents. Recreation's not the goal, unless selling entry-level bicycles or Strava Premium might be. However, the goals of recreation might be diverse, but at least one might be enjoyment. Strava seems to foster a friendly competition that can be said to be recreational. However, I can see the slippery slope where identity performance and mediating one's performance through social channels could take the recreational and turn it into labor. Certainly, I'm not arguing that Strava or other social trackers are a bad thing, but I do see them as technologies that change the way that athletes and everyday athletes portray themselves. With regard to privacy, if I can write meaning onto Froome's pattern of releasing data, it seems that releasing data has the possibility of becoming a more purposeful performance of elite athletics. While it's understandable why Froome and his team do not release numbers during the racing season, I can imagine a day when athletes do more purposefully broadcast their data as a way to signify consistency with regard to their biological feedback. Though cycling is now, as always, deciding how it will deal with doping, dopers, and allegations of doping, I can easily imagine cyclists such as Froome taking a more purposeful track towards publicizing performance data and even drug testing data. If identity is the sum of practices, as Todd May might put it, then you are what you do. Thus, presenting evidence of actions could become a more integral part of day-to-day identity performance. Some of the major limitations of such transparency are a public with a short attention span and a media propensity to drive users to click rather than to be thoughtful. I'm not just casting shade at the media, however, the economic realities of journalism and niche journalism become more and more brutal. Additionally, the quantifiable aspects of performance are not foolproof. Numbers do not win cycling races, though it can be argued that they can be an accurate indicator. The role of luck, skill, physiology, and group dynamic in cycling plays a powerful role in determining how well any given individual will do on a given day. One crash, and a race is over. However, the use of such quantified performance techniques does seem to have some practical elements as well. Recently, the first-year composition sequence at my university has been dealing with issues of information literacy. Practically speaking, asking students to use a tracker and then to apply a narrative to the data would be an interesting exercise in considering the ways that we apply meaning to data. In some respects, the notion that fitness trackers write experience is very valid. From another perspective, the notion that fitness trackers provide data that allows others to write narratives is unavoidable. Thus, as fitness trackers and tracking technology become more commonplace, I expect that they will be incorporated into the way that identity is presented. Accordingly, then, one way to leverage this is to explore such techniques in the classroom. Thank you for your time and consideration.